For a long time, one of my biggest fears has been being forgotten by loved ones, and after experiencing my grandmother's fight with dementia, it certainly hasn't subsided. The prospect of being erased from someone's life, even partially, is devastating. The near indescribable emotional pool of stories that explore this, of ceasing to be a part of another person's memories and experiences, has always haunted me. It's no wonder that memory features prominently as a theme in many video games, from amnesia to building identity with the blank slate character trope to using it as a mode to build and historicize a world. It has many valuable uses when building great stories. Of course, the flip side of this and its prevalence is that we have so many cheap and derivative utilizations of it as well. And when done poorly, when it fails to evoke or build, it's painfully apparent and quite ineffective. Final Fantasy IX has many characters, and despite feeling as though she was largely a throwaway character as a stupid kid, though Freya only had a handful of scenes truly detailing her arc, I'm now convinced that she was criminally underutilized and underappreciated. Not only because of how rife with potential her story is, but because of how one particular scene and its brilliant execution, given not only the system's limitations with facial expressions, but also the writer's grasp of conveying emotional pull and depth to the player. Freya, it is established early, is in pursuit of her lost love, Fratli. She's already familiar with Zidane when the player meets her, and their friendly barbs suggest a fairly amicable relationship. She is a far more interesting character when you think about all of the hands that pull her in different directions. She's a Burmesian and demonstrates clear allegiance to her people. She yearns to reunite with Fratli and has dedicated literally years of her life in search of him. She kindly and routinely offers advice and wisdom to Vivi and Eiko. She also clearly wants to move forward and create a better land to live in. Though I think there are probably interesting interpretations of her search for a lover that cannot recall her, and unfortunately never does despite eventually acknowledging his interest, my focus is going to be primarily on one scene, and that is her encounter with Fratli and Clara. As an aside, there are some very intriguing fan theories, some with substance and minor textual backings, and others with, well, none, focused on explaining Fratli's amnesia, usually concentrated on some imagined past battle between Beatrix and Fratli. I'd say look them up, they're fun if nothing else. In Clara, Freya is fleeing to the cathedral in an attempt to save as many as she can as Kuja's black mages attempt to stop them. Just as their path is blocked in the spire by black mages before entering the cathedral, a dragon knight shows up to defeat the mages and allow Freya to pass. Of course, this ends up being Fratli, and after he reveals that he doesn't know his own identity or recognize any of his own people, Freya is justifiably distraught and, for but a moment, near a breaking point. It's important, despite what I thought as a kid was silly, to recognize that her immediate collapse needed to communicate what graphics from that era couldn't gracefully represent in her face. That this was just simply too devastating to take, even for a person of Freya's constitution. This was her incessant, almost duty-like goal to find him. One can only imagine how strong their love and connection must have been, and here he is, without any knowledge of her or the past they certainly shared. This alone could have moved the considerably more emotional adult me, but the writers took it a step further, demonstrating a first-rate understanding of conveyance. They then used Vivi, a child in many ways, to ask what nobody else in the room would've, to yet again communicate to the player the depth of Freya's sorrow. It was a mere question. What's the matter, Freya? Are you crying? And yet, Freya's strength, Freya's knowledge of the moment and duty snapped her back to what she had to do to help her friends. This is a character I wanted more of after revisiting her story years later. Exploring memory as a theme is often a way to build personal or cultural identity. In this case, despite Freya's personal memories being intact, players are better able to understand Freya's own drives of her singular goal of locating Fratli. We get to see her dogged determination and protective nature. her ability to assess dire situations in the blink of an eye, all the while momentarily muting her own devastation to accomplish that. While I get that Final Fantasy IX's cast of characters was already large, and encumbering it more with my expectations of a sturdier arc for Freya could have just left other characters short-shrifted, a scene or two further exploring Fratli and Freya's past would have only deepened and strengthened this game's world and characters. I know it seems like a petty complaint, but considering what they were able to do and hit on in but a mere 4 scenes, the 4 scenes that held any import anyway, was impressive. It gets even trickier for me when the idea of the duty-bound soldier trope was explored pretty thoroughly with Steiner, and to be frank, in some comical and distended ways that unfortunately pushed Steiner's delayed realizations too far back in the game to be taken seriously. He's no doubt a great character, and his reluctance to abandon duty is felt most poignantly during his fight alongside Beatrix. I suppose one could say that the frustration felt because of his intransigence was deliberate and a core aspect of his eventual development, and I'd accept that because that's true. But even if this is a little silly to some, Freya's subtleties and heartache make for a far more convincing and admirable unwavering persistence. It might also be my own predilection for stories that focus on showing us how fractured relationships go on, and in this instance, how relationships that are entirely torn asunder by one party's loss of memory can mend, and how Freya coped and what residual effects remained. There's just so much here to explore. Again, I don't want this to be taken as a petty jab at Final Fantasy IX. Like I said in my VV video, and I will continue to say, the game's unique and powerful characterizations are its primary strength in my mind. This is just far more of a personal wish than it is a hard-nosed criticism of the game. Given the short amount of time Freya was allotted, they still get high praise from me. I just selfishly wanted to view the nitty-gritty of Freya and Fratli's progression as a new and old couple, fighting to establish new memories and maybe, just maybe, spark some of those old ones.